Welcome to this Wargames delivered tutorial for Bolt Action Band of Brothers. I'll be showing you how to paint a late war US airborne light machine gun team that comes in the box, and I'll be using the Wargames delivered Mega Paint set to do so. So sit back and get ready to follow along. So to paint this machine gun team, which is going to be done in the later war colour, we primed it all with army green, which gives us a really nice head start. So one thing I will point out, and it's a mistake I made, is don't glue the heads on until you're done, because it's going to be really difficult to paint that flesh, but I've done it, so I'll show you how I'm going to work with it. So the first thing we need to do is paint all of their packs and straps, and the colour we're going to use for that is scaly green. So we're just going to paint this over all their bags, straps, packs, etc. Now you can see there it's covering okay, but you may need a second coat on there just to get a nice even coverage before we move in and start to think about shading everything. So get that done nice and simple across the model, and then we'll come back and have a look at the next stage. We'll now add some depth to all that uniform using some military shader, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint this over all of the uniform and the packs. So what we'll find is this will then work its way into those recesses, start to give you some nice depth to the uniform. So it's a nice and easy step. You don't need to see me do too much of this, but just work it in and spread it around so it doesn't pool too much in one area. And then we need to let that completely dry before we come back and start highlighting. So before we go any further with highlighting, let's fix that problem I mentioned right at the start that is entirely of my own making, and that is the fact that we need to paint the flesh. So I've taken some tan flesh and I'm just going to paint this over all of the flesh areas, so you've got the faces and the hands. So just work this in. Now one of the benefits, I suppose, of everything being quite deep in shadows, you don't need to worry too much about highlighting the flesh. So hopefully you can see what I've done there, and the reason I'm doing it this way is because it means that I can actually paint over other bits. So I'm going to be painting over the helmet, I'm going to be painting over the gun, etc. So I can be a little bit messy, and I need to be a little bit messy, unfortunately, to get into those deep dark parts that I've neglected. So I'll do that. I'm going to do the hands as well. So this tan flesh covers quite nicely actually, so probably not going to need a second coat, but if you do, then that's entirely okay. And then we'll come back, we'll shade that and highlight, and then we'll move on to highlighting all the other parts of the uniform. We'll then shade that skin with a little bit of flesh wash. So again, just being careful around the uniform areas, and hopefully you can see this because it is in quite a deep area or dark area, and just work that flesh wash around. And because of the nature of these models and the way they're all kind of set, that flesh wash will be enough for the faces. We'll add a highlight on the hands, and I'll show you how to do that next when the flesh wash is dried. So to highlight the skin, the first thing we'll do is go back to tan flesh, and what we're looking to do is just paint it on these raised areas, leaving the darker flesh tone in the recesses. That's nice and easy. And you just want to work your way around the model, getting that done, catching those fingertips there. And also on this airborne guy, you can see a little bit of his face as well, so we probably want to just add a little bit of a highlight on there as well, just to kind of accentuate it and make it a little bit nicer to look at, so it's not totally dark. We'll just put a little bit of a last bright highlight on the most exposed parts of flesh with some barbarian flesh. So again, nice and easy, just catching those raised areas, making sure that we don't catch anything that we've already finished or that we're going to highlight next. So we've saved the little bit of an awkward situation like that. We'll start to highlight everything next. So let's start highlighting. So the first thing we're going to do is all those packs. So we're going to go back to scaly hide for this, and what we're looking to do is just kind of catch around the edges there. So where you've got a nice sharp edge in the plastic like that, and sort of along the top of the bag there, you can just use the point of the brush. Nice and easy to get a nice, simple and really quite fast highlight as well. We will come back in and add a second highlight on here, just to help accentuate them all a little bit more. So get that done, work your way around. If you're not happy with how it looks, then you can just take a little bit of time and you can add more of a highlight if you need to. We're just looking to leave that military shader in the recesses, and where it's kind of run into the recesses, it'll give us a fairly nice transition as well into the different kind of tones of green that we're going to have on these backpacks. So that's nice and straightforward. We'll then take some necrotic flesh just to kind of catch those sharpest edges and most raised folds. Like I said, I'm not using too much paint here. This is just to kind of make the model stand out a little bit. Because remember, it's going to be on a table about 6 feet away from you when you're playing and standing up, unless you're in there right next to it. So you just want something that looks good from that distance. So I'm not putting too much necrotic flesh on, just a little bit on, like I said, those sharpest folds. Just work your way around the model doing that. And then when that's done, we'll come back and again, we're just going to carry on the highlighting process. This is nice and simple, nice and straightforward. So we'll highlight the green on the uniform next, and we're going to go back to the base colour, which is army green, and we're just looking to catch those most raised edges on the model. So nice and easy, nice and straightforward. Again, you don't have to worry too much about what's underneath, so just focus on the areas that you think need it there. So once that's dry, maybe just looking at it, and now it's just my paint's probably a little too thin, so I'm not getting quite as sharp a highlight as I want. So I'm going to go back in, just add a little bit more to it, not too much. And then when that's dry, we'll come back and add a final highlight to the uniform again, just to make it stand out a little bit on the tabletop. So we'll highlight that green, and the colour we're going to use is Mouldy Clothes, which is fairly bright green in comparison to the kind of the army green underneath. But what you'll see is it kind of dries into the uniform, then it'll kind of just blend in. Okay, so just take your time, focus on those sharpest raised parts only, and then when that's done, we'll come back and move on to the next stage. Next up, we're going to base these helmets, and the colours we're going to use for that, or colour, is Angel Green. Now, this doesn't cover very well in one hit, so you may need to add a couple, maybe 3 coats of Angel's Green. The tone is great, and the tone's what we want, but the coverage just isn't that great out of the pot, so it's not too bad once we're giving it a good shake, but you are going to need to put a couple of coats on there. So take your time with that, get it all down, then we'll come back and we'll once that's done, we'll start work on the boots, because we're going to shade the helmet and the boots and everything with the same kind of colours, so it makes sense to do that all at the same time. So first up, we'll base the gaiters, and the colour we're going to use for this is Fur Brown. So we'll do this first, and then we'll do the boots. And like I said, we're going to do several elements here, because we're going to kind of shade them all with the same colours. Just work that in, that Fur Brown, and make sure it's not too thick. It's a nice and easy step. It covers okay. So you may be able to get away with 1 coat, you may need to put 2 on, but if you do, that's fine. And then we'll come back and do the boots next. So we'll paint the shoes with Oak Brown. Now, Oak Brown doesn't cover particularly well, so we're just going to have to put a couple of coats on it. So just be careful on there you've already finished. The other thing we'll do is any wood parts. So there's no wood on the machine gun itself, but we do have the trenching shovel handles there, which if you stuck them on, we'll paint them with it as well. So nice and straightforward, work your way around, get that done so it's a nice even coat, and then we'll have a look at I think we'll do the metallics, and then we'll shade all of those things we painted together at the same time. To paint the metallics, we'll use gunmetal. So in terms of what I'm going to paint on the machine guns, I'm going to paint the barrel. Obviously we will shade it down a bit so that it's a little bit dull, and the tripod, but I'm going to leave this area and the stock, they're going to be black, so we'll do them as one of the last things, but we're just going to catch all the working parts. And the other thing we've got as well, if you look on the packs, we've got some popper buttons, and then we've got some buckles that we want to just be careful of when we're working around. Now if that happens and you happen to push a bit too hard with your brush, just clean it off. and then tap it into the area and it'll suck up any excess so that you can repair any mistakes that you make. While we've got the gunmetal out, I'm also going to paint this ammo feed. Now the ammo feed itself is going to be gold or brass. We'll do that later on, but I just want to base it this colour because it'll be easier to paint the gold over a silver than it will be to paint it over the green underneath. So just going to let that dry, finish everything off, and then when we come back we're going to shade all those areas we base coated. So the colour we're going to use to highlight everything is dark tone. So essentially we're just going to brush this over everything that we base coated. So we've got the gaiters, the boots. It's nice and simple. Just want to make sure that you don't let it pool too much. Obviously it's going to start to pick up some of the tread on the boots, which is will give you quite a nice effect. And we're also going to use it on the metallics as well. And what I'm going to do is once it's dried on the metallics, I'm going to put a second coat on because that second coat will just dull it down even more. And I think that's quite important because the metals were quite like a I don't want to say like a kind of an oily, steely colour. They weren't bright, shiny metallics. So, and obviously don't forget things like the trenching shovel handles. Just work that on, and the helmets as well. Now the helmets in particular are quite shiny, but that's okay because we are going to hit the entire model with anti-shine once we've finished the painting. So nice and easy to get that done. And then when we come back, we'll start the highlighting process. So first up, we're going to highlight those dark brown areas. And on these models, it's just the boots. And the colour we're going to use for this is leather brown. So we're just looking to catch kind of where those highlights may fall fairly naturally. Where you've got like a nice sharp edge like that, you can just work the brush along there. And that'll kind of give you the nice edge highlights you need. Don't forget that we're going to be basing this model as well, so part of the boots will be obscured under that, so there's no need to go over the top with this highlight. It could be a nice effect to just have some of the base kind of attached to the bottom of the boots as well. And we've got these trenching handles, so what we're going to do with those is just really just catch the shape of the model with the edge of the brush. Just give them a really simple line highlight. Like I said, there's no need to be overly extravagant with these. And maybe just for that outside facing boot, it's going to catch the most light. We're going to look to just maybe give that more of a highlight. So there we are, nice and straightforward. We'll do the gaiters next. We'll go back to fur brown to highlight the gaiters, and if you remember that stippling motion I was kind of using along some of the packs earlier, I'm going to do something similar here because we don't need too much of a highlight on the gaiters. Just need enough to kind of show a little bit of differentiation through them, and that's how I'm doing it there. It's really easy and really simple. So we'll do the helmets next, and then we'll do the ammo box, the belt feed, and obviously the casing on the weapon, and once we've based it, we're done. Now to highlight the helmets, I'm just going to use a little bit of Crypt Wraith, and I'm going to use kind of like a stippling motion with this, just all over the helmet really. If I've got an area where perhaps the wash has gone too far, then I'll just stipple across the top of it. What will happen is once this dries, it'll start to blend into the model quite well. So it's a nice highlight, and it just provides quite a bit of a different texture to the helmet, which kind of replicates, I guess, the worn effect that you'll have from wearing it in battle. And that's an assumption that I'm making, but I think that's how it'll work, or how the effect you'll get. Obviously, again, these are 28mm models that you're going to be looking at from about 6 foot away on a table. So once you're done and you're happy with that, we're nearly done. We're going to do we'll do the ammo box, or we'll do the ammo feed, then the box, and then we'll just finish off with the black area there. For the ammo belt, I've just taken some bright gold and I'm just going to paint this over all of those bullets there, and you can see it's going over quite nicely over that silver metallic, so that worked out. Now this is quite bright, don't worry about that, we will shade it down in the next step, but we're not going to need a highlight on this because we need to knock back that shine quite a bit. So that's nice and simple doing that with the bright gold. So we'll let that dry and I'll shade it with you next. To shade that ammo feed, I'm just going to use some strong tone and just paint it all over the gold parts. So in terms of how many coats you give it, let that dry and see how you feel. You may want to give it another one, but I'm happy with that as it is. Like I say, once it dries, I know it'll really dull it down a bit. So like I said, we'll see how it goes, and we may give it a second coat, we may not. I want to focus on the ammo crate next, and I'd already washed it with that military shader, so if you haven't done that, then go ahead and do that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some army green and I'm just going to stab and stipple away at the edges like that, because this is just going to make it look like the box itself is worn, because I imagine the box is just refilled at points, so it's going to get quite battered, and this kind of little bit of highlighting will really help kind of bring that out. So get that done first, and then we'll just do some little metal scrapes next. And for the metal scrapes, all we're looking to do is the same kind of motion, the same sort of stippling motion, but we're looking to keep it inside some of those army green highlights that we put on there before. So it's nice and simple, nice and straightforward. It'll just, we'll dull it down with some matte coat at the end when we do the rest of the model anyway. So it won't be a bright shine, it'll be quite a dull shine. But it just adds a little bit of interest, a nice effect to the model, because we've got that little bit of extra detailing with this box. So we'll finish up with the gun casing, and the colour I'm going to use for that is just matte black, so it's nice and straightforward. Really will emphasise at this point that you need to take your time around those bits you finish, because it's a lot harder to paint over black than it is over other colours. So just do this gently, slowly, work your way around. Now it should cover in one. I can see in some places it's been a little bit stubborn, so I'll just go back in and give that a second coat. But get that done, and then when it's dry, we'll come back and I'll show you how to do a really nice, quick, sharp highlight just using the shapes of the model. To highlight that black, we'll just take a little bit of Castle Grey and just use the tip of the brush to drag it along those edges. Nice and easy. If you make any mistakes, you can just paint over it quite easily with some more black. But it just helps define the shape of that casing. So once that's done, we'll come back and we'll add the anti-shine varnish, and then we'll base the miniature. The last thing we need to do before we base it is add some anti-shine all over the model. So just paint it on, take your time with it, probably use a bigger brush than I'm using here. You don't want it to pool too heavily in one spot, so just keep moving it around. So if you get it there like that, you saw I just moved it back and around. So paint this all over the model. This will unify the colours, unify the finish, and then we'll base it all next. Basing the model is nice and easy. Just pop some PVA glue on the bottom and get some mixed flock and just roll your models around in it. And then brush it all off. And if it's picked up a little bit too much, then all you need to do is just take a wet brush and just brush it all away. There we are, nice and easy, and this just helps you kind of blend the model in with the base a little bit more as well, so it looks like they're actually in the environment rather than on the environment, which is I suppose is kind of important just for that extra bit of realism. And there we have it. This late war US Airborne light machine gun team is done and ready for the bolt action battlefield. Make sure you check out all of our other tutorials so that you know how to paint the whole box. We're also going to give away one Band of Brothers set to a lucky winner. You have just 2 days to enter from the release date of this video, so make sure you do so using the link in the description. Remember to check out Wargames Delivered for all your wargaming and hobby needs. Our links below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.